The scent of old books, dust, and lingering cologne filled the cramped apartment. Sunlight streamed through the dusty blinds, casting long shadows on the worn wooden floor. Samantha stood in the center of the room, stretching her arms over her head, her tank top clinging to the sheen of sweat on her skin. "Your dad sure kept a lot of junk," she sighed, looking around at the cluttered space. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Yeah, well, he never liked throwing things away. You sure you're okay helping him? I can always take a day off." She waved a hand dismissively. "Liam, it's fine. Your dad's a good man. I don't mind." I had no reason to think twice about it. Samantha and I had been married for 5 years, together for 7. She wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend. If anyone could handle my old man's stubbornness, it was her. Richard, my father, had always been larger than life. A former construction foreman with a booming voice and a presence that could fill a room. He and my mother had split years ago, but he stayed close, always checking in, making sure I was doing right by Samantha. He liked her. A lot. Sometimes, he even joked that he liked her more than he liked me. I had no reason to question him. No reason to suspect. But that was before everything changed. That was before I saw what I saw. That was before the rage took over. I left for work early that morning, giving Samantha a kiss on the forehead as she groggily mumbled something about calling me later. She wasn't a morning person, never had been. Richard had picked her up around 10. I got a text from him, a simple "Thanks, kid. We'll get this done in no time." I barely thought about it for the rest of the day. Sitting in my office, I drummed my fingers on my desk, staring at the endless emails flooding my inbox. Work was dragging. Nothing about real estate law was particularly exciting, and today it was damn near unbearable. Around 3 in the afternoon, I rubbed my temples and let out a sigh. Samantha hadn't texted. That wasn't unusual, but it bugged me. I pulled out my phone and typed, "Hey, babe, how's it going?" No response. I stared at my phone for a moment before slipping it back into my pocket. An hour passed, then another. Still nothing. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she and my dad were just busy. Maybe they lost track of time. But something gnawed at me. Something irrational but insistent. So, on a whim, I told my assistant I was heading out early. I decided to surprise them. I had no idea that I was about to walk into my worst nightmare. The apartment complex where my dad lived wasn't anything fancy, just an old brick building with a peeling green door and a narrow staircase that creaked under every step. As I reached the top floor, I slowed down. The door was slightly ajar. I frowned. Maybe they were moving boxes and just hadn't shut it all the way. That's what I told myself. I stepped closer, pushing the door open an inch more. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Muffled voices. A man's deep chuckle, my dad's. And then her laugh. Samantha's. Soft. Breathless. Intimate. The sound sent a strange chill down my spine. It wasn't the kind of laugh you shared over an old photo album. It was different. Playful. Flirtatious. I swallowed, my heartbeat suddenly heavy in my chest. I stepped inside. The apartment was a mess, boxes half-packed, dust floating in the warm afternoon light. But I wasn't focused on any of that, because I could hear them. Clearer now. A rhythmic creak. A low moan. I moved toward the kitchen, my legs numb, my mind refusing to accept what my ears already knew. And then I saw them. Samantha was bent over the kitchen counter, her hands gripping the edge, her head tilted back. And behind her, my father, his hands on her waist, his bare chest glistening with sweat, his mouth moving over her shoulder. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just watched. Watched as my wife, moaned my father's name. Watched as he groaned, his fingers digging into her skin. Watched as everything I had ever believed about love, trust, and family shattered into dust. I felt like I had stepped out of my own body. Like this wasn't real. Like this was some sick, twisted dream. And any second now, I'd wake up in my bed with Samantha curled up beside me, still warm from sleep, still mine. But this wasn't a dream. It was my fucking reality. And in that moment, as ball burned in my throat, as my hands clenched in a fist so tight my nails cut into my palms, I didn't say a word. I didn't make a sound. I just slowly backed away. And then I left. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember pulling out of the parking lot. All I remember is the sheer numbness that spread through my entire body as I drove aimlessly through the city, streetlights blurring past like ghosts. Rage and betrayal twisted inside me, fighting for dominance. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn around, storm back in there, and beat the shit out of my father until he couldn't even look at a woman again. I wanted to grab Samantha and shake her, make her tell me why. But I did none of those things. Instead, I kept driving, my mind racing, my pulse pounding in my ears. Confronting them wouldn't be enough. No, I needed revenge. Real, cold-blooded revenge. And I knew exactly where to start. I don't remember much of the drive, just flashes of stoplights turning green, the hum of traffic around me, the dull ache settling deep in my chest. I should have confronted them. I should have kicked down that door and beaten my father into the ground. I should have grabbed Samantha and demanded an explanation, something, anything that would make sense of the insanity I had just witnessed. But I hadn't, because nothing would have made sense. There was no rational excuse for what they were doing. No apology would have fixed this. So I drove. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight that my knuckles turned white. I tried to think, tried to breathe, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Samantha, bent over, moaning his name. His name. The betrayal was so deep, so visceral, that I felt sick to my stomach. I pulled over to the side of the road, threw open the car door, and dry heaved onto the pavement. Even my own body rejected what I'd seen. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, leaning against the car, trying to steady my breathing. My whole life had just been rewritten in an instant. How long had this been going on? Was this the first time? Had they done it before? In my house? On my bed? The more I thought about it, the worse it got. The memories started twisting, morphing into something else entirely. I saw the way my father had always looked at her. How he would joke with her, make her laugh. How, at barbecues, he would touch her back a second too long when he walked by. How she never pulled away. How I'd been too blind to see it. This wasn't new. This had history. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. The woman I had sworn my life to. The woman I had built a future with. The woman who had laid beside me every single night. Was fucking my father. I slammed my fist against the roof of my car, my vision blurring with red. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to fucking cry over this. No, I was going to make them pay. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who would understand. Someone who would be just as disgusted as I was. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, my fingers shaking. Then I saw her name. Christine, Samantha's mother. My mother-in-law. She had never liked my father. She had always hated the way he acted around women, the way he flirted with them, even when he was married to my mom. And more than anything, she had always loved me like her own son. I didn't hesitate. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times before I heard her voice. Liam. The moment I heard the concern in her voice, the dam broke. I need to see you. There was a pause. Liam, what's wrong? You don't sound okay. I clenched my teeth, forcing down the lump in my throat. Can I come over? Another pause. Then, softer. Of course. Come over now. I hung up without another word and threw the car into drive. I wasn't thinking about what I was about to do. I just knew that I needed her. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. I needed someone to hold me together before I fell apart completely. And Christine was about to become something more than just my mother-in-law. Christine's house wasn't far. Just a 15-minute drive through winding suburban streets, past trimmed hedges and manicured lawns, the kind of quiet, picturesque neighborhood where betrayal shouldn't exist. But it did. Ed had found me. By the time I pulled into her driveway, my hands were still trembling. The engine hummed beneath my grip, the warmth of the car pressing against my skin like a fever I couldn't shake. I could still hear them. Samantha's moans, my father's grunts, the sick rhythm of their bodies colliding. I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I had to get a grip. Christine's house was warmly lit, a contrast to the darkness inside me. She had always been the kind of woman who made a house feel like a home. Candles in the windows, flower beds perfectly maintained, a wreath on the door, no matter the season. I killed the engine and got out, barely registering the crunch of gravel beneath my feet. Before I could even knock, the front door swung open. And there she was, Christine. Her soft brown eyes, so much like Samantha's but warmer, searched my face immediately. She looked like she had been about to go to bed, dressed in silk pajama pants and a fitted camisole, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. But the concern on her face was instant. Liam, her voice was soft, careful, like she already knew something was wrong. The moment I saw her, the weight on my chest crushed me completely. I didn't trust myself to speak. I shook my head, swallowing the thick lump in my throat, and stepped inside. She closed the door behind me, locking us away from the rest of the world. Liam, what is it? She pressed, stepping closer. Her hand, warm, delicate, touched my arm. You're scaring me. I exhaled shakily, rubbing a hand over my jaw, trying to find the words. But they wouldn't come out. How do you tell someone that their daughter was bent over a kitchen counter, moaning their father's name? How do you put something like that into words? Christine guided me toward the couch. Sit, she said gently. I'll get you some water. I didn't argue. I sat down, my legs heavy, my body stiff. A moment later, she returned, pressing a cool glass into my hand. I didn't drink it. I just stared at it, watching the way the light reflected off the surface, rippling from the slight tremor in my grip. Christine lowered herself beside me, turning to face me fully. Talk to me, Liam, she said, her voice softer now, warmer. Whatever it is, you can tell me. I closed my eyes, and then, finally, I saw them. Silence. She didn't say anything right away, didn't even breathe. Then, carefully saw who. I forced myself to look at her. My wife. My throat tightened. With my father. I didn't think it was possible for a person's face to drain of all color so quickly. Christine just stared at me, her lips slightly parted, her breathing shallow. Then she blinked. Once. Twice. What? She whispered. I let out a hollow laugh, rubbing my temple. You heard me. Christine sat back, stunned. Her hand moved to her mouth, her fingers trembling. My daughter, she murmured, like she couldn't believe the words were real. My chest tightened. Hearing her say it, my daughter, made it even worse. She shook her head sharply, as if trying to clear the thought from her mind. No, that can't be right. Maybe you miss. I didn't misunderstand, Christine. My voice was harsher than I intended. She flinched slightly. I exhaled, forcing myself to steady my tone. I saw them. I said again, quieter this time. I heard them. She was moaning his name. His name. Christine's face contorted, something between heartbreak and fury flashing in her eyes. And then, to my surprise, she started laughing. But it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was hollow, sharp, almost bitter. That son of a bitch, she muttered. I always knew Richard was a womanizer, but this, she pressed her fingers to her temple, shaking her head. Jesus Christ, Samantha. I stared at her. You're not surprised. Christine let out a slow, exhausted breath. Surprised? No. Disgusted? Yes. A bitter taste filled my mouth. She was everything to me. My voice barely came out. Everything. And she just... I clenched my jaw. I can't even wrap my head around it. Christine watched me carefully. Then, slowly, she reached out, hesitantly at first, before taking my hand. Her fingers were soft, warm against my own. Liam, she said gently, listen to me. I looked at her. You're not the fool here, she said. They are. I swallowed thickly. Then, her hand squeezed mine just slightly. You deserve better than her. You always did. Her words did something to me, made something inside me shift. She was so close, her scent soft and floral, wrapping around me like a comfort I hadn't known I needed. Her skin was warm, her body inches from mine. And suddenly, I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just broken. I was something else entirely. Christine's brown eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, there was something there. Something unspoken. Something dangerous. And then, before I could stop myself, I leaned in, and she didn't pull away. Christine didn't move. She didn't pull away. She just sat there, her hand still wrapped around mine, her breath shallow, her lips slightly parted. And I should have stopped. I should have put distance between us. Reminded myself that this was Samantha's mother, The woman who had once scolded us for sneaking into her house past curfew when we were younger. The woman who had always been family. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Because Christine wasn't just my mother-in-law anymore. She was the only person in this entire world who could understand my pain. And right now, I wasn't thinking about right or wrong. I was thinking about how warm she was. How soft she looked in the dim light of her living room. How her lips, slightly parted in shock, looked like they were begging to be kissed. The moment stretched between us, heavy, filled with something neither of us wanted to name. Christine's fingers twitched against my palm. "Liam," she whispered. It wasn't a protest. It was something else. Something undecided. Something inviting. Her lips were inches from mine. I could feel her breath, warm and unsteady. I leaned in just a fraction more, just enough that I could see the way her pupils dilated, how her throat bobbed as she swallowed. She wanted this, but she was scared, and maybe that should have made me stop, but instead, it made me need it more. I moved closer, our noses brushing, the tension between us so thick it was suffocating. Her fingers curled against my palm, like she was grounding herself. Then, she closed the gap. Her lips met mine, hesitant at first, soft and unsure. But the moment they touched, it was like a match to gasoline. The kiss deepened instantly. Christine moaned in my mouth, quiet, unsure but hungry. I gripped the back of her neck, pulling her closer, feeling her melt into me. Her body was warm, her curves pressing against my chest as if she had been made to fit there. And for the first time all night, I didn't feel empty. I felt alive. I slid my hand into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. Christine gasped against my lips, and the sound sent a jolt of something dark and thrilling straight to my core. This was wrong. This was so wrong. But fuck, it felt good. She pulled away first, breathless, her eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered, her fingers touching her swollen lips. "Liam, But I didn't let her finish. I crashed my lips back onto hers, swallowing whatever guilt she was about to voice. Because I didn't care. I didn't care about anything anymore. I just wanted to feel something, anything that wasn't pain. Christine moaned again, her hands moving on my chest, her fingers curling against my shirt. I reached for her waist, pulling her onto my lap. Her body straddled mine, her heat pressing down against me through the thin fabric of her pajama pants. Her breath hitched. "Wait," she gasped against my lips, her fingers gripping my shoulders. "We should." "Stop," I murmured, pressing a slow kiss to the column of her throat. Christine shivered. She didn't stop me. Instead, she tilted her head back, exposing more of her neck to me, her fingers tightening in my shirt. "Liam," she breathed. Not a protest, a surrender. My hands slid under the hem of her camisole, feeling the smooth skin of her back, the warmth of her body burning against mine. Christine let out a shaky exhale, her hips shifting just slightly, just enough to send my brain into a fucking tailspin. Then, her phone rang. We both froze. The sound was sharp, cutting through the thick fog of lust and grief that had consumed us. Christine sucked in a breath, her hand still on my chest, her body still pressed against mine. The ringing stopped. A second later, a text notification pinged. Christine hesitated, then slowly pulled back, reaching for her phone. When she glanced at the screen, her entire body stiffened. I frowned. "What is it?" She turned the phone toward me. A text from Samantha. "Hey, Mom. I think Liam might have seen something today. I need to talk to you." I stared at the message, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Christine's eyes flicked up to mine, wide with realization. She knew. Samantha knew. And she was already trying to cover her tracks. Christine swallowed hard, her fingers trembling around the phone. Then, slowly, she looked back at me. Her expression had changed. The hesitation was gone. The guilt was gone. Now there was only anger. Not at me. At her. At Samantha. Christine's gaze darkened. She placed her phone down on the coffee table with deliberate slowness. Then she met my eyes. And in a voice that sent a thrill down my spine, she said, "Liam, do you want to make her pay?" I exhaled sharply, my fingers still gripping her waist. I didn't even have to think about it. I already knew the answer. Yes. Christine's question hung between us, thick and suffocating, filling the air with something far more dangerous than guilt. Do you want to make her pay? I stared at her, my heart hammering against my ribs. It wasn't just the words that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the way she had said them. Cold, calculated, like she had been waiting for this moment, like she had been waiting for a reason. Christine's fingers were still curled around my waist, her body still pressed against mine, heat radiating off her skin. I should have hesitated. I should have thought this through, but I didn't, because I wanted revenge. And right now, Christine was the only person in the world who wanted it just as badly as I did. So I reached up, my fingers tangling into her hair, and pulled her mouth back to mine. This kiss wasn't hesitant like before. It was desperate. It was hungry. Christine moaned against my lips, and the sound sent a pulse of fire straight through me. She wanted this too. She wanted to forget. She wanted to hurt them the way they had hurt us. Her hands slid up my chest, her fingers curling into my shirt, tugging me closer. And fuck, she felt so good, so soft, so warm against me. I could feel every inch of her pressing into me, every curve molding perfectly to my body, and it sent a thrill through me that I had no intention of stopping. Christine gasped as I gripped her hips, flipping her onto the couch beneath me. Her dark eyes flickered with something unreadable, something raw, something dangerous, before she pulled me down on top of her. And then we weren't thinking anymore. There was no Samantha. There was no Richard. There was only this. Only the need to drown ourselves in something else. Something that wasn't pain. Something that wasn't betrayal. Christine's nails raked down my back as I kissed her, dragging me deeper, pulling me into her world. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't breaking. She was fire, and I wanted to fucking burn. I reached for the hem of her camisole, sliding it up, but then she stopped me. Her breathing was ragged, her chest rising and falling against mine, but her hand was suddenly on my wrists, halting me. I froze. Christine stared at me, her lips swollen from my kisses, her pupils blown wide. And for a split second, I thought she was about to say no, but she didn't. She exhaled sharply, her hands shaking as she reached for my face. And then she whispered the words that nearly broke me. Take me upstairs. I sucked in a sharp breath. Her bedroom. She wanted this. She wanted all of this. I pushed off the couch, grabbing her hand and pulling her with me. Christine's fingers laced through mine, her grip tight, needy as she led me toward the stairs. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I knew this was wrong. I knew this was the kind of mistake you didn't come back from. But fuck it all. I didn't care. Christine didn't hesitate. Not when we reached the top of the stairs. Not when she pushed open her bedroom door. Not when she turned to face me, her hands sliding up my chest, her breath warm against my lips. Are you sure? I rasped, my hands settling on her hips. Christine's eyes darkened, and then she whispered, "Make me forget." I didn't need any more encouragement. My mouth crashed onto hers, and we tumbled onto the bed, lost in the fire we had started together. There was no turning back now. Not after this. Christine's body trembled beneath mine, her breath shallow, her fingers tangled in my hair as our mouths moved in sync, desperate and hungry. There was nothing careful about this. Nothing slow. Nothing sweet. This wasn't about romance. This was about revenge. Her hands slid down my back, nails raking my skin, sending a jolt of heat straight through me. I groaned in her mouth, pressing harder, feeling the way her body fit perfectly against mine. Christine gasped as I gripped the hem of her camisole, pulling it up, slowly, deliberately, watching her reaction. She didn't stop me this time. She lifted her arms, letting me peel the silk fabric from her body, leaving her in nothing but a delicate black lace bra. Fuck, I had never thought of Christine this way before. Never imagined her like this. But now I couldn't stop looking. She was stunning. Soft curves, smooth skin, a body that, despite being older than Samantha's, was so much more woman than my wife could ever be. Christine's eyes flickered with something dark, something raw, as she reached for my shirt. "Take it off," she whispered. Her voice, low and breathy, nearly undid me. I obeyed, yanking my shirt over my head and tossing it aside. Her gaze traveled over me, her tongue flicking out to wet her lips. And in that moment, I saw it. Not just desire, not just lust, but power. She wanted this just as much as I did. She wanted to hurt Samantha, to hurt Richard, and she wanted to do it by giving herself to me. Christine leaned forward, her lips grazing my collarbone, her nails digging into my shoulders as she whispered against my skin. "Take me, Liam. Make me forget her." I growled in response, capturing her lips in a deep, bruising kiss as I lowered her onto the bed. She arched beneath me, her body pressing against mine in a way that sent my blood boiling. Christine wasn't hesitant anymore. She wasn't second-guessing this. She was all in, and so was I. I traced my fingers down her stomach, stopping just at the waistband of her pajama pants. I want to tease her, to make her need me the way I needed her, to make her ache for it. Christine whimpered as I ran my knuckles along her hip bone, her body tensing beneath my touch. "Tell me," I murmured against her lips. "Tell me you want this." She shivered. Her nails dug deeper into my back. And then, "God, yes, Liam. I need you." That was all I needed to hear. With one swift motion, I slid her pajama pants down, leaving her in nothing but lace. And fuck, she was gorgeous. Her body, soft, warm, completely exposed to me, was unlike anything I had ever imagined. I ran my hands over her thighs, watching the way she squirmed beneath me, the way her breath hitched every time I touched her. "You're beautiful," I murmured, my lips brushing against her ear. Christine let out a shaky breath, tilting her head to give me more access. "Liam," she pleaded. It was pure need, and I was more than willing to give her what she wanted. I kissed her deeply as I reached behind her, unclasping her bra, letting it slide off her shoulders. She gasped as I took her in, my hands exploring every inch of her body. Christine was perfect. She was everything Samantha wasn't. And tonight, she was mine. I trailed kisses down her neck, her collarbone lower, and then, just as I was about to claim all of her, her phone rang. Again, we both froze, breathless, shaking. Christine's chest heaved beneath me, her eyes wide, her lips swollen from our kisses. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. The phone kept ringing. And this time, Christine reached for it. She hesitated. Then, with a shaky hand, she picked it up and looked at the screen. Her face went pale. I frowned. "Who is it?" She swallowed, turning the phone toward me. It was Samantha. A text popped up right after. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Now. It's urgent." Christine's grip tightened on the phone, her jaw clenching. I could see the war happening inside of her. The anger, the betrayal, the realization that her daughter was trying to get ahead of the situation. She turned back to me, something cold and sharp in her gaze. Then, slowly, she put the phone back down. Christine exhaled. Then she met my eyes, and in a voice that sent a shiver down my spine, she said, "Let her wait." And just like that, she pulled me back down into her world. And this time, there was no stopping. Christine didn't hesitate this time. There was no more doubt, no more guilt, no more hesitation. She pulled me down on top of her, her fingers threading into my hair as our lips crashed together once more. And this time, we didn't stop. We didn't hold back. We let happen. Everything about this felt wrong, but at the same time, it felt so fucking right. Christine moaned my name as I kissed down her body, my hands exploring every inch of her. Her nails raked down my back, sending shivers through me, making me groan against her skin. We weren't just having sex. This was revenge. This was anger and pain and betrayal twisting into something raw and primal. This was taking back control. Christine gasped as I grabbed her hips, pulling her closer, feeling the heat of her body wrap around mine. "Fuck, Liam," she moaned, her voice breathy needy. Hearing my name on her lips, in this moment, sent a thrill through me that I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about hurting Samantha anymore. This was about us, about what we had become in the wreckage of their betrayal. I claimed Christine that night, and she claimed me right back. We burned together, hard, fussed, deep, and by the time it was over, we lay tangled in each other, both breathless and spent, staring at the ceiling like two people who had just rewritten the course of their entire lives. Because we had. There was no coming back from this. We both knew it, and neither of us wanted to. The next morning, I woke up to the scent of Christine's skin still lingering on mine, to the warmth of her body curled up beside me, her fingers resting lightly on my chest. For a moment, I forgot everything. Forgot about Samantha. Forgot about my father. Forgot about the fucked up reality waiting for us outside of this room. But then Christine shifted beside me, letting out a soft sigh as she blinked up at me, her dark brown eyes still heavy with sleep. And just like that, it all came rushing back. I had slept with my wife's mother. I had fucked my father's mistress. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And yet, I didn't regret it. Not one goddamn bit. Christine studied me for a moment, as if searching for something in my expression. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. Not a regretful smile. Not an ashamed one. A slow, knowing, satisfied smile. "Good morning," she murmured. I smirked, running a hand down her back. "Good morning." She stretched, her bare skin brushing against mine. And fuck, even after last night, I still wanted her. But before I could pull her back down, she sighed and sat up, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. The moment she looked at the screen, her expression darkened. I sat up beside her, glancing over her shoulder. More missed calls from Samantha. More texts. "Mom, please call me back. It's really important. I think Liam knows. He left work early yesterday. I need to talk to him. We need to fix this." Christine scoffed, tossing the phone onto the bed. "Fix this?" she muttered bitterly. "She thinks she can just fix this." I clenched my jaw, the anger from yesterday rushing back like a tidal wave. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't panicked because she had hurt me. She was panicked because she got caught. Christine exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over her face. "She has no idea, does she?" I turned to her. "About this?" I gestured between us. "No, but she will." Christine stilled. I could see it, the shift in her expression. The moment she realized exactly what I meant. She wasn't just the woman I'd slept with last night. She was my partner in this now. A slow smirk played on her lips. "You really want to destroy her, don't you?" I held her gaze. Then, without hesitation, "Yes." Christine let out a slow breath, then nodded. "Good," she murmured. "Because I do, too." And just like that, the affair began, and the real revenge was about to start. Christine and I didn't stop. We couldn't stop. That night of weakness should have been a mistake, something we both regretted, something we swore to forget. But we didn't forget. We wanted more. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was the way Christine made me feel. Wanted, desired, powerful. It was the way she looked at me, like I was the only man in the world. Something Samantha hadn't done in a long, long time. So we kept going. We found excuses to see each other. I left work early. She invited me over. We met in hotel rooms. We stopped pretending that this was just about hurting them. It was about us now, and I didn't care who found out. Samantha noticed. Of course she did. At first, she thought I was spiraling. She was expecting the devastated husband routine. She wanted me to be miserable, to wallow, to drown myself in alcohol and heartbreak. But that's not what she got. She got silence. She got distance. She got a husband who wasn't broken. A husband who didn't beg. And that scared her. It started with small things. She'd watch me across the dinner table, searching my face, trying to read me. She'd ask careful questions. "Are you okay? You've been acting different. If something's wrong, we can talk about it." I'd just smile and tell her everything was fine. And that terrified her more than anything else. She expected rage. She expected fury. Instead, I gave her nothing. And that's when she got suspicious. One night, she made a mistake. I had just stepped out of the shower when I noticed my phone wasn't where I left it. I found Samantha in the kitchen, her back to me, her shoulders tense. She was holding my phone, unlocked. I smirked. She didn't hear me approach until I was right behind her. "What are you looking for?" I asked casually. Samantha jumped, nearly dropping the phone. She spun around, her face a mask of forced innocence. I held out my hand. She hesitated. Then, reluctantly, she placed my phone in my palm. I glanced at the screen. She had been looking through my messages. I smiled. "Find anything interesting?" Her jaw tightened. "Who's Christine?" she asked. My pulse spiked, but I didn't let it show. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. You've been texting her. A lot. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the edge beneath it. You leave work early. You come home late. And now you're smiling at your phone like some lovesick teenager. I let out a low chuckle. Samantha had no idea how close she was to the truth. Christine is your mother, I said smoothly. She's been checking in on me. Unlike you. Her lips parted slightly. She hadn't expected that answer. You're lying, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. I shrugged, stepping past her. Think what you want. And with that, I left her standing there. Suspicious. Unsure. Slowly unraveling. She wasn't sure what she was looking for yet, but she was about to find out. And when she did, it would destroy her. Christine wasn't the same woman she had been a few weeks ago. The Christine I first fell into bed with was bitter, vengeful, hurt. But now she was alive. I saw in the way she smiled more. The way she touched me, not just in lust, but in need. It had started as revenge. Now I didn't know what the fuck it was. But I didn't want to stop. I wasn't thinking about the consequences. I wasn't thinking about the future. I was just thinking about her. And then, one night, Christine called me. Her voice was different. Not playful. Not seductive. Not even angry. It was shaken. And that's when I knew. Something was wrong. I drove to Christine's house immediately. I didn't hesitate. I didn't even call her back. I just got in my car and drove. The entire time my heart pounded. What if Samantha had found out? What if Richard had confronted her? What if? I pulled in her driveway, jumped out of the car, and knocked on the door. Christine opened it within seconds. Her face was pale, her dark eyes wide and uncertain. I frowned. What happened? She didn't answer. She just turned and walked inside. I followed, shutting the door behind me. She was standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, avoiding my gaze. Christine, I said slowly. She inhaled sharply. Then, finally, she turned to me, and she said two words that changed everything. I'm pregnant. The room spun. I just stood there, staring at her, waiting for her to tell me she was joking, that this was some kind of sick, twisted mind game. But she wasn't smiling. She wasn't smirking. She wasn't even breathing properly. She was just watching me, waiting for my reaction. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling sharply. You're sure? Christine swallowed. She nodded. I took 2 tests, she said softly, and I made a doctor's appointment for tomorrow. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. Jesus Christ. Christine's jaw tightened. I didn't plan this, Liam, she said, her voice harder now. Do you think I wanted this to happen? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since she spoke, I noticed something else in her eyes. Something she was hiding. Something deeper than shock. Something more terrifying than panic. And that's when I realized. She wasn't just scared of the pregnancy. She was scared of what it meant. For me. For her. For everything we had done. I took a step closer, my hands settling on her waist. Christine shivered at the contact. Liam, she whispered. I could feel it. The way her body leaned into mine. The way she still needed me despite the chaos spinning between us. We'll figure it out, I said. Her breath hitched. Her eyes searched mine, looking for any sign of a lie. She didn't find one. Slowly, her fingers curled into my shirt. And that's when she broke. Christine fell in my arms, her body trembling, her breath hot against my neck. I held her tighter than I ever had before, because for the first time since this affair started, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about us. About what the fuck we were going to do now. Because there was no hiding this. No running from it. Christine was carrying my child. And when Samantha found out, it was going to destroy her. Christine wasn't answering Samantha's calls anymore. She wasn't explaining herself. She wasn't playing along with her daughter's desperate attempts to control the damage. She was done with Samantha. And that scared my wife more than anything. I could see it in the way she watched me at home. The way she bit her lip when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her hands fidgeted when she checked her phone, waiting, praying for a response from her mother. But nothing came. And then, 2 nights later, Samantha snapped. I came home late. Christine and I had spent the evening together again. Not just fucking, but talking. She was still trying to process the pregnancy. She hadn't told anyone. Not yet. She wanted me there when she did. And I wanted to be there, too. Not just because of the revenge. Not just because I wanted to watch Samantha's world collapse the way she had collapsed mine, but because Christine wasn't just some affair anymore. She was something more, and I didn't even know what to call it. But before I could figure it out, Samantha cornered me in the kitchen. She was waiting for me, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Where were you?" she asked. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, twisting the cap off slowly. "Out," I said. She let out a bitter laugh. "That's all I get." I took a sip, watching her over the rim of the bottle. She was seething. "Where were you, Liam?" she asked again, sharper this time. I smirked. "Why do you care?" Her nostrils flared. "Are you cheating on me?" I didn't blink. I didn't react. I just let the words hang there, let them sink in, let her feel the weight of what she was asking. And then I took a slow step toward her. "Would that bother you?" I asked. Samantha's lips parted. For the first time in weeks, I saw it, real fear in her eyes. Not just fear of losing me, fear of what she had done. Fear of what I had become because of it. I set my bottle down on the counter and leaned in, just enough to invade her space. "Why don't you tell me the truth first?" I murmured. "Where were you, Samantha?" "Yesterday. Last week. The month before that." She froze. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Go on," I urged. "Tell me. Say it out loud." Her lips trembled. For a second, I thought she might actually do it. But then, her phone buzzed. She flinched. She pulled it from her pocket, glanced at the screen, and immediately paled. My stomach twisted. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Samantha didn't answer. She just turned and ran out of the kitchen, straight toward the front door, straight toward her mother's house. And that's when I knew Christine had just dropped the bombshell. I followed her. I didn't run. I didn't have to, because I already knew what was waiting for her. By the time I pulled into Christine's driveway, Samantha's car was already parked crookedly on the curb. The front door was wide open. I walked inside, and the moment I stepped into the living room, I saw it. Saw her. Samantha was standing in the center of the room, frozen in horror. Christine stood across from her, arms crossed over her stomach, calm as ever. And then Samantha turned to me, eyes wide, face pale, hands shaking. "You," she breathed. Her voice cracked. "You and my mother?" I didn't flinch. I didn't deny it. I just held her gaze. And then Christine spoke, deliberate, slow, and merciless. "I slept with your husband." Samantha gasped like she had been punched in the gut. Tears welled in her eyes, her lips trembling. No, you're lying." Christine smirked. Then, without hesitation, she said the words that broke my wife completely. "And now, I'm carrying a child." Samantha collapsed. Not physically, but I saw it. Her entire world crumbling in an instant. She screamed, a sharp, broken sound that shattered the air around us. "You," she choked, whipping toward me, shaking with rage. "You did this to me." I smiled. A slow, satisfied, cold-blooded smile. "I learned from the best," I said. And then she lunged at me. Samantha lunged at me, her face twisted in pure, feral rage. But she was too slow, too shaken. I sidestepped easily, watching as she stumbled forward, nearly crashing into the coffee table. "You fucking bastard!" she shrieked, whipping around to face me again, her chest heaving. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just stood there, watching her fall apart. Because this was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment she finally understood. The moment she finally felt everything she had done to me. And God, it felt good. Samantha's breathing was ragged, her fingers shaking as she pointed at Christine. "You," she whispered, her voice dripping with betrayal. Christine arched an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. "Me," she said simply. Samantha's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but fury. "You ruined our family," she screamed. Christine laughed, a slow, mocking laugh, the kind that made Samantha's face go even redder. "That's rich," Christine mused, crossing her arms over her stomach. "You had no problem ruining your own family when you were spreading your legs for Richard." Samantha let out a strangled cry, a noise between a sob and a snarl. "That was different," she spat. I made a mistake." Christine tilted her head. "Did you?" she asked, her voice calm. Because for what Liam saw, you were enjoying yourself just fine. Samantha gasped. You. Her head snapped toward me. You told her? I smirked. Of course I did. She shook her head violently, stepping back like she could physically escape the truth. No, this isn't real. You don't love her, Liam. You're just trying to get back at me. Christine's smile turned dangerous. She took a slow step forward, her nails grazing over her stomach. Tell me, Samantha, she purred. What's worse, the fact that I took your husband, or the fact that he put a baby inside me? Samantha screamed. Loud, raw, ugly. Then, before I could react, her hand swung through the air and slapped Christine across the face. The sound echoed through the living room, sharp and violent. Christine's head snapped to the side. I froze. For a second, there was nothing but silence. Samantha's chest heaved. Christine stood still, her cheek reddening. And then, she turned back, slowly, her dark eyes burning. Samantha took a step back, fear flickering in her expression. Christine touched her face, just a brief graze of her fingertips over her skin, before letting out a soft, cruel laugh. Then, faster than I could process, she grabbed Samantha's hair and yanked her down to her knees. Samantha screamed, thrashing, but Christine was merciless. You really thought you could play with people's lives and not suffer the consequences? Christine hissed, gripping her hair tighter. Samantha whimpered. For the first time since this all began, she looked small. She looked weak. She looked exactly like I had felt when I saw her with my father. Christine leaned down, her lips grazing Samantha's ear. Enjoy your new sibling, she whispered. Then she let her go, stepping back as Samantha collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, defeated, broken. And I just watched. Because this was justice. This was balance. And I wasn't going to waste another second feeling bad for the woman who had destroyed me first.